If you have sex on the first date or a same-night lay, in all likelihood, she's really hot for and into fucking you based on physical criteria alone. If you have sex on the second or third date, she's into fucking you and probably wants a relationship, but she wanted to give you a token impression of her not being easy. If she fucks you after the fourth date, you'll do as her first alternate. If you're sexless after 5 to 6 dates, you've probably been at it for over 6 weeks, and the medium is the message. Next, this rule has proven to be the single most contentious thing I've ever published on The Rational Male. Only my essays on the nature of alpha has stirred up more controversy. For motivated, hypergamous reasons, my arguing for genuine sexual interest as an indicator of desire on a woman's part never sits well with women. Furthermore, even many red pill men have argued that a woman's immediate sexual interest is the sign of a slut. My counter to these arguments is generally based in women's observable, organic behaviors. While it may be ennobling to consider that a woman might want to be cautious with whom she has sex, women's biology and hypergamous nature puts that assertion to the test. Similarly, it seems prudent for a monogamy-minded guy to be discerning about the character of a woman who is an easy lay, and likewise, he'll make a liar of himself if that natural opportunity arises. That's going to be a consistent paradox with this rule, but it doesn't make it any less tenable, even for the more religious-minded men whose convictions compel them to chastity. The rule still provides them with a benchmark for genuine desire. As I outlined in plate theory, you don't have to be banging every girl on your roster, but those women should want to be banging you. If this is your position, ideally, Rule 3 should be modified to filter for genuine, not mitigated, not negotiated desire. Iron Rule of Tomassi number 4. Never, under any circumstance, live with a woman you aren't married to or are not planning to marry within 6 months. You are utterly powerless in this situation. Never buy a home with a girlfriend. Never sign a rental lease with a girlfriend. Never agree to move into her home, and absolutely never move a woman into your own established living arrangement. I'm adamantly opposed to the shacking up dynamic. It is a trap that far too many men allow themselves to fall into. My fervor against this isn't based on some moral issue. It is, again, simple pragmatism. If you live with a woman, you may as well be married, because upon doing so, every liability and accountability of marriage is then in effect. You not only lose any freedom of anonymity, you commit to, legally, being responsible for the continuation of your living arrangement, regardless of how your relationship decays. I should also emphasize the point that when you commit, and it is a financial commitment, to cohabitating with a girlfriend, you will notice a marked decrease in her sexual availability and desire. The single most common complaint in regards to how to reignite a woman's desire comes as the result of a guy having moved into a living arrangement with his LTR. All of that competitive anxiety and its resulting sexual tension that made your single sex life so great is removed from her shoulders, and she can comfortably relax in the knowledge that she is your only source of sexual intimacy. Putting your name on that lease with her, even if it's just your name, is akin to signing an insurance policy for her. I, the undersigned, promise not to fuck any woman but this girl for a 1-year term. She thinks if he wasn't serious about me, he wouldn't have signed the lease. Now all of that impetus and energy that made having marathon sex with you an outright necessity is relaxed. She controls the frame, and she's got it in writing that it is for at least a year. Just don't do it. Relationships last best when you spin more plates, or at the very least, keep each other at arm's distance. There was a time when the hip, counterculture thing to do was flip the establishment the bird and cohabit with a girlfriend sans the marriage contract. In the swinging post-sexual revolution 70s, feminism was more than happy to encourage the idea until it ran into the problem of making men financially accountable for all the free milk the cows were giving away. However, that notwithstanding, there's still a kind of lingering after-effect feeling about living together that seems like a good idea to guys to this day. Of all the reasonable excuses I've heard for men wanting to cohabit with their girlfriends, the most common is that they did so for financial reasons. He or she needed a roommate, and why not one that they enjoy fucking? That's the cover story. But underneath it, there's the semi-conscious understanding that it would be far more convenient to have a continuous flow of pussy as part of the utilities, uninterrupted by the formalities of having to go on dates or drive somewhere to get it. I can't say that, on the surface, this doesn't make perfect sense. Leave it to a man to find the most deductive solution to his problem. However, as with most things woman, what seems like the most deductive solution is often a cleverly disguised trap. Shacking up, just as in marriage, affords a woman a reasonable sense of comfort. It becomes at least a marginal shelter from the competition anxiety that she had to endure while living on her own and dating a guy who still had at least the perceived option to be unpredictable. Not so in the quasi-marriage that living together dictates. And it's just this sense of predictability that allows her to relax into familiarity and later into dictating the terms of her own intimacy. In other words, she's in the perfect position to ration her sexuality, to negotiate the terms of her desire in exchange for a living arrangement. By the same reasoning, most AFCs view cohabitating as an ideal arrangement. Few of them really have the real options, much less the will to experiment exercising them, to see shacking up as anything but a great way of exiting the SMP, limiting potential rejection and locking down a consistent supply of pussy. Men who are spinning plates, men with options, men with ambition, rarely see cohabitating as anything but a limiting hindrance on their lives. On some level of consciousness, women understand this dynamic. Guys with options, the alphas they'd prefer, wouldn't consider cohabitation. So when a man agrees to, or suggests living together, it impresses her with two things. Either he's an alpha who she's won over so completely that he's ready to commit to exclusivity with her, or he's a beta with no better propositions than to settle into living with what he believes is his sure thing. What's jarring for a woman is that she may start her living arrangement thinking she's found the elusive alpha ready to commit, only to later find he was just a clever beta who reverts back into his former, comfortable AFC self after they signed the lease agreement. Now, all that said, what makes more sense? To live independently and enjoy the options to live unhindered with a live-in girlfriend, or move her in and have to deal with her every waking moment? Moving in with a woman implies commitment, and whenever you commit to anything, you lose your two most valuable resources, options and the ability to maneuver. Iron Rule 1. Iron Rule 2. Iron Rule 3. Iron Rule 4. Iron Rule of Tomassi number 5. Never allow a woman to be in control of the birth. It's called birth control because someone is controlling the birth. There are presently 41 different types of contraception available for women. For men, there are only 2, vasectomy or a condom. Your only line of defense against her choice, the only thing separating a man from a lifetime, not just 18 years, of interacting with the decider of altering the course of his life is a thin layer of latex. I've had far too many guys hit me with the argument that they implicitly trust their girlfriends to be on the pill or whatever, and that she doesn't want kids, only to be an unprepared daddy 9 months later after the accident. The only accident they had was not being in control of the birth themselves. In fact, I'd argue that men need to use extra caution when in an LTR, since the ease of getting too relaxed with her is present. Accidental pregnancy is practically a cottage industry now. For a woman without education, or even with, and without means, an unplanned pregnancy may be a pretty good prospect, especially when every law and social expectation weighs in her favor. These are professional mommies. When I counseled in Reno, I knew a guy who married this woman who had 3 children from 2 fathers, who he himself had impregnated with her 4th. She was a professional mother. Flush it. In 2002, the NBA issued a highly controversial and publicized warning to professional basketball players, stating that players be advised to wear condoms when having sexual intercourse with women when on road games and to flush the condom down the toilet in order to dispose of the semen. This warning was the result of several paternity suits that year involving women these players had slept with by retrieving the condoms from the trash and self-impregnating with the player's semen. The NBA had enough occurrences of this kind to warrant a league-wide warning that year. All of these players are now 100% liable for the welfare of these children and their former partners by default because there are no laws protecting men from fraudulent pregnancies. To what degree is protection implicitly implied? If a man does everything in his power to avoid a pregnancy, barring abstinence or a vasectomy, and can prove his intent, and the woman still becomes pregnant, even by fraud, the man is still liable for that pregnancy. Women are 100% protected, and men are 0% protected. I can even go so far as to quote you cases where a man marrying a single mother later divorces her and is still expected to pay future child support for a child he did not father, even without official adoption of the child by the man. A lot of guys would like to make a moral issue of this, but it's not a question of right or wrong. It's dealing with the facts of what is in the environment we find ourselves in today. The fact of the matter is that unless men use prior discretion and take responsibility for the birth control, not allowing a woman to be solely responsible for it, he is 100% powerless. This means bring your own condoms and flush them yourself. And yes, even, especially, in an LTR or marriage. That means standing firm, even when she says, "Take that thing off, I'm on the pill and I want to feel you." Mothers want to be mothers, otherwise they decide not to be. Single mommies are far too common an occurrence to bet the odds with the rest of your life. The sexual revolution had far more to do with the development of hormonal means of birth control than the legalization of abortion. Condoms have been around since before World War II, but even in the baby boom, there were far less unwanted pregnancies or single motherhood than after the advent of the pill. The pill put the control of birth into the hands of women. Where before it was a man's responsibility to put the rubber on and do so correctly if both wanted to avoid smaller versions of themselves running around the house. The choice of professionals